President al-Assad visits Al Umayyan power station and congratulates its workers and Syrian workers on their day. And Syrian workers affirm their steadfastness in the face of terrorism. Hezbollah Secretary General asserts that what is happening in Syria aims at removing it from the regional equation. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian television in Damascus. President Bashar al-Assad today visited Al Umayyan power station in Tashrin Park in Damascus and congratulated its workers and the Syrian workers on their day. The Syrians commemorate Labor Day this year, despite the difficult situation and harsh circumstances ensuing from the current crisis in the country. On this occasion, the Syrian workers have affirmed their steadfastness in face of terrorism and their resolve to shoulder their responsibilities towards the homeland, despite the pain they have suffered and the sacrifices they have offered.
The 1st of May anniversary comes this year while Syria is being exposed to the most ferocious war by the forces of aggression, who continue their conspiracy against the peoples who are struggling for their just causes and aspirations. Such forces are represented in the American administration, the Zionist entity and Western governments in collusion with some Arab countries in Turkey and their terrorist tools. The terrorism has not been confined to innocent civilians. It has gone further to target the industrial and economic sectors, systematically destroying infrastructure and economic and services installations. The destruction has been accompanied by stealing the machines and equipment of more than 2,000 industrial establishments in Aleppo worth 60 billion Syrian pounds. They've been smuggled to Turkey. Touristic installations were also subject to sabotage. For example, in Damascus suburbs only, more than 100 touristic installations were attacked and dropped. The damage exceeded 4 billion Syrian pounds. The workers of about 50% of the industrial installations cannot have access to their place of work. 95% of the 12,000 industrial installations in Aleppo have sustained damage. Work in 70% of the installations has come to a standstill. 2 years have passed since the beginning of the crisis, yet our working class continues its resistance and work to rebuild Syria. It continues the struggle against the enemy's agents and its stand on the side of the citizens of the homeland and their national unity and principles.
Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, has said that accusing Syria of using chemical weapons is part of a propaganda campaign to influence the big powers and the world public opinion. In a press conference held in New York, al-Jafari said such accusations were not based on compelling evidence. He pointed out that the Syrian government took the initiative in asking for an investigation into the crimes of Khan al-Assal. Al-Jafari asserted that the chemical materials used in Aleppo came from Turkey, adding that the armed terrorist groups had dropped plastic boxes containing some kind of powder, which was probably a chemical material, among citizens in Saraqib and Idlib suburbs, causing suffocation cases. The terrorists then moved the affected citizens to Turkish hospitals to take advantage of the situation in order to accuse the Syrian government of using chemical weapons. Russian ambassador to Lebanon Alexander Zaspkin has reiterated Russia's absolute rejection of what's being arranged against Syria under the pretext of using chemical weapons. In an interview with the Lebanese Al Manar channel, Zaspkin said U.S. intervention in Syria on the basis of an international resolution is out of the question, and its intervention outside the UN Security Council would be a major responsibility, which the consequences of which it may not be able to bear. The Russian ambassador, affirmed that his country does not accept any foreign aggression against Syria or intervention in its internal affairs, calling on the world community to respect international legitimacy and help the Syrian people solve the crisis instead of escalating it. He added that to continue supporting terrorists would obstruct any political solution to the crisis. Secretary General of Hezbollah party Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah has said that the goal of what's happening in Syria isn't just removing Syria from the resistance axis and the Arab-Israeli conflict, but the goal is to destroy the country and its people, society and army, and remove it from the regional equation as a whole. In a speech broadcast yesterday on Al-Manar TV, Nasrallah said that there are two directions that have been prevalent since the crisis began in Syria. The first of which went for military options to topple the regime. It went further, slaughtering people, summoning foreign intervention and talking about chemical weapons. This direction also included scholars who made fatwas permitting bloodshed. He said that the second direction, which Hezbollah is a part of, calls for political settlement for what's happening in Syria and for solving the crisis in it, affirming that Syria had true friends in the region and the world who will not allow it to fall into the hands of the US, Israel and Takfiri groups. Said Nasrallah said the Palestinian cause was facing the danger of real liquidation because of what's happening in Syria. He stressed that the situation in Syria had its effects on Lebanon, Iraq and the region as a whole. Iran issued a very strong condemnation of the terrorist explosion which hit Al Marji commercial center in Damascus yesterday. The spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Ramin Mahmanbrest, said that such crimes show the real face of the terrorists in Syria, holding some regional and international sides which support terrorism accountable for the crimes committed against the Syrian people. He called on international bodies and human rights organizations to support efforts that lead to a political solution to the crisis in Syria and to the immediate halt of violence. Going to our field developments, in Dar'a, an armed terrorist group tried to assassinate Dr. Walid Al-Shahnour, the general director of Dar'a National Hospital, who was wounded in the chest by a sniper's bullet. He was taken to hospital's intensive care unit for treatment. In Damascus countryside, Syrian army units conducted a number of operations against terrorist gatherings in Adr Adra, Deir Atiyya al-Sheikh area and to the west of Qara, killing and wounding dozens of gunmen. The army also destroyed their vehicles and equipment. In Hama, army units restored security to Wadi Joz, Masha' and Aleppo Road in Hama after destroying terrorist hideouts and confiscating their ammunition and equipment, which included explosive devices, RPG launchers and heavy machine guns. A unit of the Syrian armed forces attacked the terrorist hideouts in the cork factory, Al-Janudiyya and Al-Aliyya in Jisr al-Shughur, inflicting on them heavy losses and injuries. A military source declared that another unit of the Syrian Arab armed forces confronted infiltration attempts to Abu Dhuhr airport and airbase by terrorist groups from the villages located to the north of the airport, killing and wounding most of them, and the rest fled. The source also added that the engineering units have dismantled 3 explosive devices between 40 to 50 kilograms of weight, which have been put by terrorists in Ariha highway and prepared to be remotely detonated to target citizens. In Homs, an army unit attacked a terrorist hideout in Karam Shamsham and Jurat al-Shayyah, killing and wounding dozens of terrorists. And in Latakia countryside, army units targeted an armed terrorist group in Ghamam village and eliminated its members, in addition to destroying a number of vehicles used to attack public and private properties. Going to regional developments, and in Iraq 4 people were killed and 12 others were wounded in a bomb car explosion to the east of Baghdad. The Iraqi police declared that the explosion has targeted a police checkpoint in Al-Husayniya on the east of Baghdad, and 4 police officers were wounded. Meanwhile, some terrorist explosions targeted some regions in Iraq, killing 36 people and wounding 93 others. Some 170 prisoners escaped from a prison in Libya's Sibha prison, 800 kilometers south of the capital, Tripoli. Abu Bakr Hamza, Sibha's local council spokesperson, said that the escape took place after a dispute among the prisoners turned into chaos. So far, some of the prisoners have turned themselves in and some others have been hunted down, while a large number of them remain at large. The local council members have met with Ramadan Barasi, military governor of southern Libya, to discuss ways to deal with the incident. He added that Sibha prison witnessed 4 escapes in 2 months due to the deteriorating security situation in the city. With this, we come to the end of our news. For more details, you can visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Stay with us after the break, the latest in economy and finance in our economic news.
The chambers of the agricultural production called for developing the livestock and restructuring the animal production sector. Moreover, the chambers also called for setting a large production companies for a high economic feasibility in developing the production and using the modern ways. This is to increase the animal production and to reduce the costs. The investment establishments approved the new transportation projects in Damascus, which include the investment of the electronic taxis in addition to installing electronical and solar and wind energy stations in Damascus. The Directorate also approved for some fuel station projects according to the legislative decree number 8 for the year 2007, as long as each of the project's companies have at least 25 stations. The Directorate also affirmed that these projects are qualitative and they are similar to the projects that have been approved according to the legislative decree number 10 for the year 1991. The Brent crude oil is down after OPEC's production increased for a 5-month high. Also, the industry group has said that the U.S. stockpiles climbed for the first time in 3 weeks. The futures also slid. The U.S. stocks are up, sending the Standard & Poor's 500 index to a record high. The European stocks declined, pairing the 11th high. The Japanese shares also fell after the posting of the monthly high. Gold fell, extending its worst monthly losses in more than a year, as the investors are afraid of the commodities. This is also as the Federal Reserve is maintaining the monetary stimulus. The dollar extended the drop to an 8-week low amid the speculations that the Federal Reserve may affirm its commitment to the maintaining of the bond purchases when it announced its policies later today. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news bulletin for today. Thank you for joining us.